just makes very happy. And I feel like I would have loved to be both on stage, off stage at the same time, all the time. And that's why I'm probably kind of everywhere, because I don't want to miss a note from anywhere.
Oh, yes.
As happy as I look.
As happy as I look. Yes, like what she said. I'm also contented.
But so what would perhaps speak against you as choices is that when I look through the program, you're not the ones who have been playing the most Shostakovich. Or perhaps even, at least relatively to how much you've been playing, the least. Did you wish you had played more Shostakovich?
She will play an hour this afternoon.
No, but you know, somehow it doesn't really matter, because it's a context which functions so fantastically, and the whole context is like there is not one missing puzzle part in this whole. And amazing program. I can't stop wondering how perfect it is. And so it's
And I was actually telling someone over drinks last night that I'm going to go back to the orchestra and start bragging to my colleagues about how much I know about Shostakovich now. So when we're sitting playing the Fifth Symphony or something, I'm going to turn to someone and say, "Did you know that Shostakovich was in love with Ustvolskaya?" It's taken the whole week for me to learn how to pronounce that properly. So thank you very much. I've learned a lot. It's really been fascinating, actually, just to be surrounded by this music.
Was it much easier to play the piece than to pronounce her name?
Yes, I think so.
But there is a learning process to this?
Oh, certainly.
And what did we learn?
Well, as a musician, you're kind of like taking the same journey as you, as an audience member, right? So when we learn pieces, it's a similar kind of experience that I hope you're having this week as well. It's a journey of discovery, of increasing your knowledge about the composers, and relating that to how you can relate, perhaps emotionally, but not necessarily, maybe intellectually, how you can relate with the composers and the music, and then experiencing that. So we do the same things when we come to festivals and we play a few different pieces that aren't the entire collection of pieces. But if we play one piece by Shostakovich or not, the point of an experience like this for audience and performer is that we come away from it a little richer, a little bit more, perhaps inspired, and happier.
I thought the word happy is a strange one in this context. I mean, I've never seen so many happy faces leaving Shostakovich's concerts. We were supposed, and there was this moment when in the church there was a performance of these pieces for two violins and piano, and we applauded enthusiastically, and everyone was smiling and laughing because of Shostakovich in the 1950s, and it felt weird. Did we learn anything about Shostakovich and happiness? I mean, the grand narrative is that this is gloomy, repressed, censored. Someone please give them a microphone.
Yes, I've never been held back before. I would like to say one very small thing about happiness, which is that I think there is, in music, there is not a direct correlation between happy sounding music and happiness, and that we know from lots and lots of folk traditions and from the classical tradition that very sad music can make people very, very happy. I would take one very obvious example, which is the great American tradition, Black American tradition of spirituals, where the most gloomy, apocalyptic songs transform entire crowds and congregations into ecstasies of joy. And I once heard the great, still living composer Sofia Gubaidulina, another difficult name to pronounce, who's a great friend of Alexander Bustin and of mine and of my wife. Sonia once said, we were listening to the 10th Symphony together, which we're going to hear in the four-hand version, one movement, in an hour or so. And she said, you know, for me, the genius of Shostakovich was that he could take the darkest music and make it shine more brightly than anyone else around him. In other words, it's the light that comes out of the darkness that it is the core of his genius. And I never forgot it when she said that. And I think, to me, I do not come away, even from a very painful work like the viola sonata, I don't come away weeping. I come away filled with wisdom and possibilities. And I think that's very important, that art of any kind, even if it's just somebody drunk singing in the street, which, by the way, was one of Shostakovich's favorite forms of music making. He collected songs by very, very drunken people, and he put them into his pieces. So one of those two violin pieces was an arrangement of a movement from his ballet, the Bright Stream. And it contains a tune in the middle, which everybody smiling at in the church. I happen to know the words of that tune, and I do not know anybody in this room that I would have the courage to tell the meaning of those words to. They're very, very, very indecent.
That's why you chose to have it in the church, wasn't it?
Yeah. And he did that many times. There is a really, really disgusting song, usually sung by very drunk Russian people, which he put into the second cello concerto, so that when Slava Rosendal turned the page, he would burst out laughing and be unable to control himself. And the orchestra making all these tragic sounds, and the tune that Slava was playing is of eye-watering indecency.
But is it? I mean, that's our experience. Because I'm not a Shostakovich insider myself, and I felt sort of caught up in this master narrative of the composer as a tragic hero, resistance figure, gloomy, dreary, unhappy. Does that narrative change in light of what we hear when we hear such a long stretch of his working life as a composer put together as now? Do we leave him with a sense of grief? Or does that change?
Well, I think what has become clear for me during this week is the complexity, the ambiguity in the music, and you pointed out very wisely, Erling, that we shouldn't take this music as statements, though it is very difficult to listen to it only as music. But what I think is with great music, when we play the second trio, and there is this apocalyptic place in the last movement, you know, there's a climax after climax, and when you think it can't get more climactic, there comes a moment which is so unexpected, and it's the Jewish dance which goes berserk, and you can imagine everything. I mean, there's Holocaust in it, there's all kinds of tragedy, but at the same time there's ecstasy, and there's the feeling that I'm alive. You know, there's all these different emotions in it, and I think that's the thing for me with this music, and with all great music, that you cannot say that this is about sadness, this is about happiness. The great pieces of music, they contain all these feelings together, except maybe the pieces for two violins.
Also, I think, back to the happiness factor and the smiles as we finish a concert, there are many pieces that we play as musicians where we know that it is extremely challenging to smile after. For instance, the way this is not a Shostakovich piece, but the way that maybe one of the greatest pieces written for clarinet ends, the Brahms Clarinet Quintet. The way this ends, I never want to smile after. No one does in the audience. And often the smiles come after the second bow. You know, you stand there for the first bow, and even after the trio we did yesterday in church, it's more serious, and then you walk off. And the smiles are for us, I think. They're for us being in the room together and appreciating that we just experienced something together that was perhaps challenging and depressing, and yet we're doing it together. We're smiling mainly for you, for us, for our performance, for our having experienced that thing. And sometimes that's where the smiles appear.
Also the experience on stage, this emotional experience, what we are every time having, that it is such a joy often, and it can, it's a process which is then developing throughout the piece, and sometimes emotionally it can be on such a high level that one can't really stop smiling. Even during playing, things are happening on stage, and I have personally it goes up here and I can't even stop, or sometimes I'm thinking I should now keep calm. And this is really some precious moments. And smile maybe not necessarily all the time means the full happiness. It's an inside feeling. And we don't see his most smiling pictures, but it probably also quite a bit connected with the whole historical time, this unbelievably unfortunate era to be born in, and to be able to see actually the repressions of end of 30s, basically almost all his friends being taken before the war started, before Europe was still in order, but Russia was already in process, and of course we would clearly hear that in his music. I mean, this is, and also just sometimes I'm thinking these are the people like Shostakovich, also Prokofiev, Shostakovich even stronger, but these are the people who has been in St. Petersburg, for example, during the hunger, where people basically would eat the meat of the dead people laying there. So these are just extremely unimaginable thoughts for our daily life now. And those people has been going through this. And in a way, it's a big gratefulness, or I mean, we should, I mean, that we can be in touch with this music, which is basically attached to the history, not verbally but musically, which basically expresses much more. And also to carry what has been historically and to try to do it better. And musically, of course, this is what we're all the time trying to do, to bring the happiness to the public.
I would like to say something else as a non-performer sitting next to three fantastic performers. That one of the joys of a festival, for me as an outsider coming in, is being with people actually making the music. And for 4 days we have been sunk in people's actual music making. I said to Anthony yesterday that I don't think I've ever heard the full range of possible colours and sounds on the clarinet before. For me, it's not just education about the people who wrote this music, but to sit there and hear him conjuring. I turned to Alexander Woodson and I said, it's like magic. For us who are not players, it's extraordinary that somebody maybe the piece that he was playing is only one note, but in the course of the duration of that one note, he's told a complete story. Similarly, last night I went with Alexander to listen to Lefebvre playing for him in the church alone, the piano piece Lamento. And sitting next to the composer, this is a piece in memory of his father, concentrating on the sounds and then talking to Lefebvre. And Lefebvre, he said to him, can you make the soft music in the left hand sound further away and the bird song in the right hand sound closer to the audience? So he did it. I don't know how he did it, but he did it. And that's like magic, and I can certainly say that that makes me smile. It's not just the joy of the pieces, it's the joy of the artistry of the performers and the incredible physical involvement in the creation of the sounds.
And just to comment about that, because I think when you're dealing with a great composer and a creative mind like that, I just find it so extraordinary to, instead of just saying the normal thing, can it be louder, can it be softer, and then suddenly become spatial, you know, further away and closer. I mean, and it's so much more easier to relate to than if just somebody said, oh, I think the right hand should be louder and maybe a little softer in the left hand. Okay, and then, but it's something so much more emotional if you talk about can it be closer and can it be further away.